The moment I opened my eyes, I was back in my familiar boudoir, surrounded by the festive air of celebration. My memories stopped at the instant. The crown prince had framed me hating me for standing between him and my cousin. When I was 6 months pregnant, he had used the excuse of a pilgrimage to Mount Tai to pray for blessings, and had me seized by mountain bandits. To avoid disgrace, I had leapt from a cliff, taking both our lives with me. All the memories of my past life crashed over me like a tidal wave. I sat stunned for a long time before finally steeling myself for one desperate gamble. I would go along with the mistake. I would absolutely not correct the error of boarding the wrong bridal sedan. To marry my cousin, the crown prince had already made his secret arrangements. Unless something unexpected occurred, the bridal sedan waiting outside the Chen manor had already been swapped. The marriage had been personally bestowed by the emperor. The crown prince could not openly change it, but he could scheme. Once the deed was done, even the emperor would have no choice but to accept it. When the auspicious hour arrived, Fu Liu supported me out of my boudoir. Even as I stepped into the sedan, I said nothing about the strangeness. Sure enough, when the palanquin finally stopped, I did not enter the Eastern Palace. Instead, I was married into the residence of the fourth prince, Xiaoji. I continued pretending ignorance and performed the wedding vows with him, becoming husband and wife. When I was carried into the bridal chamber, I deliberately clutched his large hand, feigned a stumble, and truly fell against his chest. His body was as hard as iron. He truly lived up to his reputation as a warrior who had fought on distant battlefields. It was said that Xiaoji was the son of the unforgettable first love in the emperor's heart. He had once possessed a strong chance at the throne, but several years ago he had suddenly developed a madness. He flew into rages without warning, disliked being close to anyone, and especially avoided women. In my past life, I had once overheard palace servants whispering that the once handsome and outstanding youth had fallen into a state where he could turn into a bloodthirsty Rakshasa at any moment, all because the empress had been secretly poisoning him for years. In other words, there was a traitor inside the prince's residence. Right now, I was deliberately testing Xiaoji. I wanted to gauge exactly how severe his madness truly was. The moment I fell into his arms, his large hand instinctively caught my waist. He steadied me instead of immediately pushing me away. Clearly, deep in his bones, he was not as cold and heartless as the rumors claimed. I lowered my voice so only the two of us could hear. "Thank you, my husband." The hand at my waist tightened slightly. Then he set me firmly on my feet and released me. Even through the red veil, I could feel the chill radiating from him. Without a word, he led me straight to the bridal chamber. His palm was warm, yet rough with calluses. The moment we entered the new room, Xiaoji let go of my hand almost immediately and quietly left. Not long afterward, news that the two new brides of the Chen family had boarded the wrong bridal sedan spread like wildfire. By the time people from the prince's residence rushed to the Eastern Palace, the crown prince and my cousin had already hastily consummated the marriage. Fu Liu's face was pale with worry. "Eldest young miss, what should we do? You were supposed to marry into the Eastern Palace. I personally lifted your veil." I caught a glimpse of red robes outside the door and said softly, "What is there to worry about? I believe this is heaven's will. I have long secretly admired the fourth prince. Now that things have turned out this way, it feels as though my wish has finally been granted." Fu Liu's eyes widened in shock. Of course she knew I had never admired Xiaoji. But men needed to be coaxed. If I kept up the act long enough, he would eventually believe it. A woman who was wholeheartedly devoted to him and did not despise his madness. He would have to show some tolerance. Only then would my future days be easier. I raised a hand to cover Fu Liu's mouth before she could say something she shouldn't. It seems the gods truly heard my prayers and granted my wish. Everyone says my husband has a fiery temper and is prone to fits of madness, but there was once a time when he was a dashing young man, riding fine horses in embroidered robes. Outsiders may not know this, but I once encountered mountain bandits, and it was my husband who led his men to drive them away. From that moment on, I have carried him in my heart. A few years ago, when Xiaoji was only 15, he did indeed quell a mountain bandit uprising. He saved so many people that he naturally wouldn't remember whether I was among them. The best lie is 7 parts false mixed with 3 parts true. It becomes impossible to tell where truth ends and deception begins. Fu Liu looked even more bewildered. It was true that I had taken her out many times and we had run into bandits, yet we had always escaped safely. My roundabout words had completely confused her. Just then, Xiaoju stepped into the bridal chamber. Fu Liu immediately retreated to the side. The man's features were cold and stern, his deep eyes like the night sea. His brows were perpetually furrowed, and a layer of gloom lingered in his gaze that could never be dispelled. His extreme aloofness made it easy to overlook how strikingly handsome he truly was. The red wedding robes only enhanced his elegant, dashing bearing. My heart tightened. Not from emotion, but from uncertainty. Could I truly win over this god of death? I spoke first, my bright eyes fixed on him as I asked cautiously, "My husband, I heard that my cousin and I boarded the wrong bridal sedan. The Eastern Palace has already completed the wedding ceremony. It seems nothing can be changed now, so I can only be your wife." As I spoke, I bloomed into a radiant smile like a peony opening in full glory, as if I were thoroughly delighted with this outcome. Xiaozhi's brows furrowed once more. I reached out, intending to touch the center of his forehead, but he tilted his head aside. Indeed, he disliked being touched. Xiaozhi's voice was cold. "Conduct yourself with propriety." I swallowed my words and pressed forward another step, my eyes brimming with affection. "We have already bowed in the hall and become husband and wife. Why does my husband still tell me to conduct myself with propriety? Very well, I will obey whatever my husband says. As long as you are not angry, I must first lower myself. Only then will it be easier to earn your trust. A woman who knows when to bend and when to stand tall is a true lady." Not long after, a messenger arrived from the palace. "The crown prince and your cousin have already consummated their marriage. In that case, Xiaozhi and I could only be bound together." The farce of the swapped bridal sedan had ended. I had obtained exactly what I wanted. Humming a little tune, I went to bathe. Knowing Xiaozhi was still in the room, I deliberately sang the most popular love song of the season, the joyful ballad of a woman marrying the man she loved. Even I felt my mood was genuinely good. Yet my mind was filled with calculations. Not much time had passed since my rebirth. In my past life, Xiaozhi had died because of his own madness. He had taken his own life. He was the son of the white moonlight in the emperor's heart. In recent years, as the emperor aged, the harem no longer held his interest. He missed his long-deceased beloved more and more. Therefore, he poured all his longing onto Xiaozhi. This only made the empress and the crown prince more desperate to eliminate him before it was too late. So I had to move faster. After bathing, I draped a sheer gauze robe over myself. Beneath it, I wore a vivid red tutu embroidered with intertwined mandarin duck striking and alluring. I had barely taken 2 steps toward Xiaozhi when the man said coldly, "Don't come near me." I froze like a bird startled from its branch. Then I let a trace of shy girlish embarrassment appear on my face. My image was that of a sheltered young lady hopelessly infatuated with him, now married to him because of the bridal Sedan mix-up. Besides joy, there was naturally a touch of anticipation. I put on a wounded expression. "But my husband, tonight is our wedding night." I bit my lip as if I might cry at any moment. Xiaozhi's sword-like brows drew together tightly. His gaze swept over me once before he deliberately closed his eyes. He lay at the very edge of the bed, completely ignoring me. After a brief hesitation, I climbed onto the bed with light steps. My long hair cascaded down and deliberately brushed past his throat. Then I obediently lay down on the inner side. These subtle maneuvers left no trace he could fault me for. Yet when I pretended to be fast asleep, I gradually inched closer to him. I could clearly feel his body growing rigid. Not long after, he abruptly got out of bed and left the bridal chamber. I opened my eyes and smiled softly. A man like Xiaozhi, if he truly despised someone, would drive them away directly. He would never leave on his own. This proved I still had a chance, and that was enough. But time was short. I had to accelerate my plans. The next morning, Fu Liu helped me dress and pouted. "Eldest young miss, who on earth spends the first day of their marriage sleeping in the study? The young master is clearly neglecting you." I looked at my reflection in the mirror and smiled faintly. Nonsense. My husband must be cherishing me and giving me time to adjust. My husband is the finest man in the world. You are not allowed to speak ill of him behind his back. Fu Liu was about to retort when a tall figure stepped into the room. Xiaozhi's face remained expressionless. He only said, "After breakfast, we will enter the palace to pay our respects." I turned and gave him a radiant smile. "Yes, my husband, are you waiting to have breakfast with me? You are so good to me." The corners of Xiaozhi's tightly pressed lips twitched slightly. He looked extremely helpless. When I accompanied Xiaozhi into the palace to greet the emperor and empress, the crown prince and Chen Zhujiao were already present. Chen Zhujiao was my younger cousin. Her father, my uncle, had achieved little in court, so she had originally been betrothed to Xiaozhi. Now that she had married into the Eastern Palace instead, her face naturally glowed with pride. The crown prince was also thoroughly satisfied to have obtained the woman he desired in this life. The two of them did not bother hiding their affectionate glances. Even though they had only consummated their marriage the night before, Their mutual affection was obvious. But how long could such feelings truly last? People always yearned for what they did not possess. Once they truly held it, boredom and regret would soon follow. Moreover, this time I intended to push Xiaoji onto that throne. What was the crown prince worth? Throughout the tea ceremony, I kept a gentle, smiling expression, as though I too had married the man I loved. Chen Mujiao saw that I showed no anger at all. Instead, her own expression darkened, and her interest visibly waned. When the two of us were alone in the imperial garden, Chen Mujiao deliberately boasted, "Sister, this is simply fate. Who could have guessed the bridal sedan would take the wrong person?" Last night, when the crown prince saw that the bride was me, he was overjoyed and refused to exchange her. I had no way to change it either. Now that we have consummated the marriage, it is even more impossible to undo. Sister has been married off to that fourth prince who avoids all women. It is truly a grievance for you. How was your night last night? My cousin and the crown prince were perfectly in sync, sharing a night of endless passion. I nearly vomited on the spot. The scene naturally appeared in my mind. The crown prince and Chen Mujiao had long been secretly involved. Last night they must have been like dry tinder meeting a raging flame. I smiled. What do you mean by that, cousin? I should actually thank the bridal sedan mix-up. To be honest, I have long admired my husband. The Eastern Palace has several concubines, while the prince's residence has only me. Of course I live far more comfortably. Chen Mujiao choked on her words. That's right. The crown prince was fond of beauty and loved dallying with women. Otherwise, how could he have begun an affair with Chen Mujiao so early? Chen Mujiao had been jealous that I was marrying the crown prince. Every time she met him, she deliberately showed her admiration. After a few encounters, he had taken the bait. At that moment, the crown prince and Xiaoji had somehow appeared a few steps away. The two men must have overheard our conversation. The crown prince's expression shifted subtly. He glanced at me several times. For now, I paid him no attention. Sooner or later, I would seize everything he cared about the throne and his life. I lifted my skirts and ran toward Shui, calling out sweetly, "My husband." I reached out as if to touch his arm, then shyly withdrew my hand, deliberately gazing at him with deep affection. I had eyes like autumn waters, brimming with emotion. Anyone who saw that gaze would believe I was hopelessly infatuated with Xiaoji. The crown prince's brows furrowed even tighter, while Xiaoji regarded me with dark, unreadable eyes. At the banquet, the empress bestowed many treasures upon me, appearing generous on the surface. She was clearly displeased that the crown prince had changed brides. After all, my father and elder brother were the true pillars of the Chen family, while my uncle's entire household was worthless. The empress was convinced the Chen family would side with Xiaoji, so she would accelerate her efforts to eliminate him. Therefore, during the feast, I deliberately dropped a casual remark. This tea tastes rather strange. Sensitive as Xiaoji was, he indeed paused mid-motion, but he said nothing. He was cautious and perceptive. He would not easily reveal his emotions. Yet he would certainly grow suspicious. I only needed to add more fuel to the fire. On the way back to the prince's residence, assassins suddenly attacked the carriage. They came in great numbers and with fierce momentum. Just as one of them swung a sword toward Xiaoji, I did not hesitate. I threw myself in front of him. The sharp blade pierced my shoulder. Blood gushed out instantly. Xiaoji clearly never expected me to react so quickly. It was not that I was skilled in martial arts, nor that I was unafraid of death. Everything had been arranged by me. That morning, before entering the palace, I had sent a trusted aide to summon my elder brother for a private conversation. I told him everything about my past life, how I had been harmed, the conspiracy between my cousin and my uncle's family. After I and the child in my womb died, my soul had not dispersed. I had watched with my own eyes as the crown prince colluded with my uncle to kill my father and elder brother and seize the Chen family's military power. I had lost my mother when I was young. My elder brother doted on me immensely. Whether my words were true or false, he would help me. I asked him to send men disguised as assassins from the Eastern Palace. This way, I could use the ruse of self-injury to win Xiaoji's trust, while simultaneously driving a deeper wedge between Xiaoji and the crown prince. The crown prince was ambitious, but what I feared most was that Xiaoji had no desire to fight for the throne. I had to force him to want it willingly. The sword wound was perfectly placed, not damaging any vital organs but severe enough to sell the act. I collapsed into Xiaoji's arms. Before I closed my eyes, I caught a fleeting glimpse of worry and shock on his face. I continued acting, "My husband, as long as you are safe, that is all that matters." Then I fainted. Xiaoji finally held me tightly. His voice remained cold, yet carried a trace of urgency. He left half his men to continue the fight, while the rest immediately escorted the carriage back to the residence. Seeing that his objective had been achieved, my elder brother naturally did not pursue the battle. The fight ended quickly, but all the evidence left behind pointed squarely at the Eastern Palace. Before long the carriage returned to the prince's residence. Xiaoji carried me in his arms and strode into the inner courtyard. Fu Liu was sobbing uncontrollably. Woo-woo! Eldest young miss is most afraid of pain. This was true, I was afraid of pain. But we had reached the point where one must release the bait to catch the wolf. I was placed on the bed. Just as Xiaoji ordered someone to summon a physician, I clutched his arm tightly, pretending to be delirious. My husband, go quickly. Don't worry about me. He froze yet did not pull his hand away. I mumbled a few words, then began calling for mother. Both of us had lost our mothers. It was easier to evoke sympathy this way. Just as I had predicted, Xiaoji had not been born cold and heartless. Years of chronic poisoning by the Empress had twisted his temperament into what it was now. He remained by my side until the physician finished treating the wound. Only then did I truly fall asleep. The next day, when I awoke, Xiaoji came the moment he heard the news. His attitude was completely different from the day before. He took the initiative to show concern and responded to my words. I knew my opportunity had arrived. Xiaoji had begun to trust me. Thus, 2 days later, enduring the pain, I got out of bed and personally brought tea to him. There was nothing wrong with the bedroom. The only place I could think of was the study. The food in the prince's residence remained normal. Only Xiaoji in the entire manor suffered from madness, and the study was his private domain. Clearly, the Empress was a deeply scheming woman. Xiaoji was slightly startled when he saw me but still spoke sternly. What are you doing here? Your wound still needs rest. I made up an excuse. But my husband, I missed you too much. His gaze paused. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but his eyes seemed to avoid mine, as if he did not dare look directly at me. I seized the moment. How strange. When my mother gave birth to me, she died in difficult labor. Because of that, I learned medicine from a young age and often disguised myself to slip into the military camps, following my father and elder brother to the battlefield. The moment I stepped into the study, I smelled something amiss. Sure enough, someone had tampered with things here. Xiaoji's expression darkened. What do you mean? I blinked rapidly and spoke frankly. This tea was originally nothing unusual, but if it is mixed with ancient incense here, it will trigger a reaction. If a person inhales it over a long period, they will grow increasingly irritable and mentally unstable until they suffer qi deviation and descend into madness. Xiaoji felt as though he had been struck on the head. His gaze froze, a cold glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. That very day, he sealed the prince's residence and launched a thorough investigation. His methods were thunderous. In just half a day, he had rooted out the traitor. After severe interrogation, the man confessed to being the Empress's agent. At the critical moment, I threw myself into Xiaoji's arms, curling up against his broad chest, trembling and weeping. My husband, how much suffering have you endured all these years? The Empress wants to clear the path for the crown prince and drive you to your death, doesn't she? She cannot shake you, so she will surely harm you again in the future. So Xiaoji, have you finally woken up? Only when you dominate the world can you become the blade in my hand. I cried like pear blossoms drenched in rain, unable to stop. The ginger water on my handkerchief worked wonders. Xiaoji did not kill the traitor, immediately keeping him alive still served a purpose. But the courtyard was thick with the stench of blood. I hugged his waist tightly, sobbing until I shook. I felt his body stiffen. His hand slowly settled on my shoulder and gently pushed me away, as if afraid of aggravating my wound. Our eyes met. My vision was blurred with tears. My husband, don't worry, I will definitely protect you. Xiaoji's gaze seemed to freeze. He stared at me without blinking. He probably did not realize that his perpetually furrowed brows had slightly relaxed. For years, although he was a prince, he had likely always been lonely. A lonely heart could hardly withstand such fierce and sincere affection. Xiaoji remained silent for a long time. I pretended to be innocent. My husband, my father and elder brother have held military power for many years and achieved countless merits. As your wife, they will naturally protect you. Using military power to safeguard a prince, what does that signify? Rebellion? Who would dare say such a thing? Xiaoji's Adam's apple bobbed. He placed a fingertip against my lips, his voice hoarse. My lady, be careful with your words. I held onto his hand, letting him continue touching my lips. His entire body went rigid. A moment later, his handsome face flushed red. This man truly had never been close to women. He was so pure. In my heart, I laughed and seized the opportunity. My husband, the Empress has been poisoning you for many years. It just so happens that I have studied medicine. Let me treat you, all right? If anything happens to you, how will I go on living? I wiped the corners of my eyes with the handkerchief. The spiciness of the ginger made fresh tears well up. Xiaozhi seemed at a loss for how to coax someone. He opened his mouth helplessly. Fine, very well. I had achieved another goal. Only when Xiaozhi's body was healthy could he seize the throne. That night, I began treating him. For years he had suffered chronic poisoning. Even if he suddenly fell ill and died, no one would suspect the empress. My husband, take off your clothes. Xiaozhi froze. His handsome face flushed again. My lady, you are still injured. Where is his mind wandering? I suddenly understood and smiled faintly. My husband, I need to use silver needles to draw blood from your heart meridian to verify my theory. If your madness is caused by chronic poison, this blood will definitely show abnormalities. My husband, where exactly is your mind wandering? Seeing him stunned, I grew playful. Although I have admired my husband for a long time and am quite attached to your body and appearance, right now both of us are injured. I'm afraid we cannot consummate our marriage. Why? Is my husband already impatient? Could it be that you are even more eager than I am? I had disguised myself and mingled in military camps before. I had heard plenty of crude remarks. I was definitely not some shy, sheltered young lady. Xiaozhi stood there dumbfounded, then his gaze averted. I urged him, my husband, what are you waiting for? Take it off. Xiaozhi looked at me carefully. Even the tips of his ears turned red. This person really cannot withstand teasing. After several days of careful recuperation, and with the poisonous incense in the study removed, Xiaozhi's symptoms of madness improved dramatically. He was no longer as cold as before. Yet he revealed nothing outwardly. He even forced the traitor to continue sending messages back to the palace, making the empress believe everything remained under her control. To make the act more convincing, Xiaozhi deliberately had an episode in the tea room. I immediately hugged him, pretending to comfort him. After several such performances, rumors spread throughout the capital that the fourth prince's madness was worsening by the day. I, the eldest young miss of the Chen family, became an object of pity. A woman who should have been a glorious crown princess had instead become the fourth prince's consort Somyun, who might lose her husband at any moment. People sighed with regret. But in truth, both Xiaozhi's body and mind were steadily recovering. Xiaozhi had always been a martial artist with a physique far superior to ordinary men. Under my meticulous care, the poison in his body no longer affected him much. He often practiced swordplay in the courtyard. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but every time I passed by, he seemed to swing his sword with even greater vigor. Soon, an important turning point arrived. The annual autumn hunt was approaching. In my past life, the crown prince and the empress had deliberately released wolves, intending to create an accident that would see Xiaozhi die beneath their jaws. Xiaozhi had fought his way out alone, but afterward, his madness had worsened until he could no longer control himself. He had drawn his sword and taken his own life without harming anyone else. It was clear that deep in his soul, he was an extremely kind person. In this life, I wanted not only to change my own fate, but also to help him change his. Every kind person deserved a good ending. Before the hunt, I pretended to have a nightmare. In the middle of the night, I woke with a start, threw myself into Xiaozhi's arms, and cried until I could barely breathe. By now, Xiaozhi had learned to patiently coax me. His large hand gently patted my back, his voice softening. Don't be afraid, I'm here. I looked up, trembling, and began my performance. My husband, it was so terrifying. I dreamed you were surrounded by a pack of wolves, and a gray wolf bit into your calf. You must be extremely careful during this hunt. My husband is so heroic. Of course the empress and the crown prince will be jealous. If anything happens to you, I will not live alone. I will follow you into the grave. The night was deep and still. The room fell into a terrifying silence. Xiaozhi was completely stunned. He opened his mouth, frightened into temporary speechlessness by my words, but his gaze had clearly deepened several degrees. He had begun to seriously consider what I said. Very well, I will definitely be careful. The next morning, Xiaozhi entered the palace to see the emperor and accompanied the imperial entourage to the hunting grounds. Meanwhile, I held a secret discussion with my elder brother. In the past few days, my elder brother had uncovered many things. It was not difficult to spot the clues, he said. Our uncle indeed intends to seize military power. The second branch has long colluded with the crown prince. Sister, it is fortunate that you boarded the wrong bridal sedan. I smiled without answering. Currently, old Madame Chen was our grandfather's second wife, not our father's birth mother. Our father and elder brother were away fighting year-round, so the inner residence of the Chen family had long been controlled by our step-grandmother, who favored the second branch. Therefore, the people in the manor could not be trusted. In my past life, our father and elder brother had been poisoned and killed by people within the family. Their years of achievements had fallen into our uncle's hands. My elder brother continued, "Sister, I will immediately send men to secretly protect your husband. I absolutely will not allow him to come to harm." "Oh, have you and your husband consummated the marriage yet?" I pursed my lips and smiled. "It is not yet the right time." "Elder brother, there is no need to rush." My elder brother glanced at me. "You are so confident, you will certainly be able to teach the fourth prince." I nodded. Xiao Ji and the crown prince were completely different kinds of men. By now, I felt even more certain that I had placed my bet on the right person. Not everyone could be supported. Not everyone was worth teaching. Xiao Ji was inwardly delighted, yet outwardly maintained his usual cold indifference. He had never imagined he would meet a woman like Chen Wanjiao. Perhaps heaven, taking pity on the hardships he had endured, had sent her to his side. Chen Wanjiao was wholeheartedly devoted to him. She had helped him uncover the traitor in the residence and detoxify him. She was truly his lucky star. Originally, he had been weary of living. Now he only wanted to live a long, long life. There were still so many things he and Chen Wanjiao had yet to experience together. Upon arriving at the hunting grounds, Xiao Ji became extremely vigilant. He did not act alone. He stayed close to the emperor at all times. He wanted to see just how bold the crown prince truly was. Unexpectedly, even with the emperor present, it could not stop the crown prince's determination to harm him. But this was also good. It allowed Xiao Ji to act accordingly. When the pack of wolves attacked, Xiao Ji immediately moved to protect the emperor. A vicious wolf lunged straight at his majesty. Xiao Ji drew his sword and thrust forward, saving the emperor at the critical moment when his life hung by a thread. Only then did the hidden guards in the shadows slowly emerge. Only by letting the emperor truly feel the danger would he cherish Xiao Ji's life-saving grace even more. After a fierce battle, most of the wolves lay dead. The survivors scattered and fled. Xiao Ji, always a man of few words, simply extended his hand toward the emperor who had fallen to the ground. "Father, are you all right?" The emperor grasped his hand. For a moment, it seemed as though he saw the woman from years ago with her hair tied high, an image etched into his very bones. The emperor was so moved that tears fell. "Laosi, you truly resemble your mother. Back then, your mother also saved me at the hunting grounds." Xiao Ji did not claim credit. He remained silent, as if grieving. The emperor hugged him tightly, his voice choked with emotion. "I miss your mother very much." When the crown prince and his entourage arrived, they witnessed this scene of fatherly love and filial piety. The crown prince's expression changed drastically. Not only did the emperor value Xiao Ji even more, but he immediately bestowed heavy rewards on the spot: 10,000 taels of gold, and an additional 1,000 residence troops. According to the laws of this dynasty, raising private residence troops required the emperor's permission, and the number could not exceed 2,000. Exceeding that limit was punished as treason. The prince's residence already had more than 1,000 troops. This showed just how much the emperor valued and trusted Xiao Ji. This move undoubtedly made the crown prince even more anxious. The hunt ended early. When Xiao Ji and eldest young Master Chen passed each other, Xiao Ji was very polite and nodded slightly. "Eldest brother-in-law, thank you for today." Eldest young Master Chen was stunned. He scratched his nose, unable to suppress the upward curve of his lips. Brother-in-law. The fourth prince's mouth is truly sweet. The moment the crown prince returned to the eastern palace, he flew into a thunderous rage. Even though he and Chen Mujiao had not been married long, he could not help venting his anger on her. Chen Mujiao said, "Your Highness, don't be impatient. You are the crown prince. The one the emperor values most is still you." The crown prince roared, "Shut your mouth." Chen Mujiao froze, gripping her handkerchief tightly, not knowing what to do. It was clear the crown prince had once doted on her greatly. No one knew that the chronic poison the empress had administered to Xiao Ji's was now gradually taking effect on the crown prince as well. The empress could plant people in the prince's residence, so others could plant traitors in the eastern palace. Those who committed too many evil deeds would eventually suffer the consequences. Only then would justice be served. Thanks to my elder brother's secret maneuvering, our uncle gained not the slightest advantage. Not long after, news of victory arrived from my father, who was stationed at the southern frontier. The emperor was overjoyed. He not only heavily rewarded the Chen family, but also showed special favor to Xiao Ji and me. Even the tribute from Dongzhou this year was divided, with girls' items sent to the prince's residence. The crown prince grew even more furious, and at the same time, filled with deep regret. The spies reported that the crown prince had even wailed in front of Chen Mujiao. If I had known it would turn out like this, I would never have swapped the wife. You and your father are both useless good-for-nothings. Chen Mujiao burst into tears. Right in front of the crown prince, she began stripping off her clothes. Once, the crown prince had been bewitched by her beauty and fallen under her spell. But ever since she married into the Eastern Palace, his passion for her had cooled compared to their secret affair days. And Mujiao could not understand it. The crown prince shoved her away without a shred of tenderness. She fell to the ground, clutching her face as she sobbed uncontrollably. The effects of the chronic poison had robbed him of all patience. Already lacking self-control, he now felt like ants crawling over a hot griddle. The crown prince secretly requested a private meeting with me. Of course I gave him the opportunity, and I deliberately left clues so that people from the prince's residence could report it to Xiaoji in time. The moment he saw me, the crown prince's eyes lit up. He put on an expression of deep, regretful affection. Wanjiao, you were supposed to marry me. You and I were destined for each other. Do you want to correct this mistaken marriage? Salsi is nothing but a sick man. He cannot give you what you desire. I smiled seductively, but the smile never reached my eyes. So the crown prince has already grown tired of Chen Mujiao? As expected. Even the white moonlight in his heart could only last so long. That is the true nature of despicable men. The crown prince thought I was flirting with him. The spring fragrance incense in the elegant room began to take effect. Lust clouded his eyes. He lunged toward me. I immediately dodged and screamed loudly. My screams only excited him further. At that exact moment, Xiaoji kicked the door open and charged in. I felt as though a peerless hero had descended from the heavens. I threw myself into his arms. My husband, thank goodness you arrived in time. The crown prince, he tried to violate me. He even said I was supposed to marry him. I went limp as though boneless. Xiaoji held me tightly, his breathing ragged with fury. A man who always kept himself under iron control finally snapped. He delivered a vicious kick straight to the crown prince's chest. I clung to him. My husband, don't hit him anymore. He is the crown prince. We cannot afford to offend him. Xiaoji's sword-like brows drew together tightly. He swept me into his arms and strode out, his eyes dark with killing intent that rolled like a storm before the rain. I knew the desire to seize power had begun to stir in him. The fire I had lit was burning at just the right intensity. The crown prince had lost all reason. Even though he was severely injured, he did not dare report the incident before the emperor. The concubines of the Eastern Palace began to suffer one after another. Chen Mujiao, as the crown princess, naturally bore the brunt of it first. Chen Mujiao had once dreamed of becoming mother of the nation. She never imagined she would be tormented into a broken, deranged shell before the crown prince even ascended the throne. The crown prince's methods were ruthless. When Chen Mujiao arrived at the prince's residence, even thick layers of powder could not hide the marks on her face. Her gait was bizarre, as though her legs had been broken. She came straight to our door. Clearly she had reached the end of her rope, which suited me perfectly. Chen Mujiao entered the residence and announced she wished to meet Xiaoji personally. I could roughly guess her purpose. Xiaoji glanced at me, brows slightly furrowed, as though reluctant to see her. I smiled and coaxed him. My husband, don't worry, I will go with you. Perhaps she has something important to say. Only then did Xiaoji nod. He took my hand and we entered the main hall together. Chen Mujiao's eyes flashed with obvious jealousy when she saw us. If not for boarding the wrong bridal sedan, I would be the fourth prince's consort, and you would be the one being beaten in the Eastern Palace. Of course she was unwilling to accept it. Xiaozi was a man of few words and had no desire to waste them on her. I asked directly, cousin, if you have something to say to my husband, speak plainly. Chen Mujiao lowered her head like a proud dove. This matter is extremely important. I hope sister will step aside. Xiaoji spoke coldly, his voice laced with frost. My wife will not leave. I froze for a moment, then smiled inwardly. My husband is truly domineering. A strange warmth rose in my chest. Chen Mujiao had never interacted with Xiaoji before. She had poured all her efforts into clinging to the Eastern Palace. Now that she had awakened from her dream, she looked at him with infatuation. But she did not dare disobey him. She endured it and said, I know the true cause of Consort Shu's death. I can tell your highness, but the two marriages must be corrected. I am the one who should be the prince's consort. Sister should marry into the Eastern Palace. Ridiculous. Before I could even open my mouth, Xiaoji spoke first. Absolutely impossible. His reaction was so strong that it was obvious he would never accept any swap. I understood he had already developed feelings for me. A man like him, once he loved, found it nearly impossible to change. Chen Mujiao could not believe it. Does your highness truly not wish to know the cause of Consort Shu's death? I knew how Consort Shu had died, but I wanted Xiao Ji to investigate it himself. Only then would his hatred for the empress and the crown prince burn even hotter. Unexpectedly, Xiao Ji did not appreciate Chen Mujiao's kindness at all. He issued the order directly, "See the guest out." Without this prince's permission, the crown princess is not allowed to set foot in the prince's residence again. With that, Xiao Ji tightened his grip on my hand, as though afraid I might be taken away. I said, moved, "My husband, then you must personally investigate the true cause of your mother's death. Even if my cousin does not speak, I believe that with your ability, you will uncover the truth." Xiao Ji's gaze was sincere and intense. His Adam's apple bobbed as he replied softly, A few days later, my elder brother came to the prince's residence for a private conversation with me. "Sister, these past few days the fourth prince has been investigating Consort Shu's death. All the midwives who attended her and the servants in her palace have been questioned. Some have died. Several others are currently serving in the empress's palace. The fourth prince has already confirmed that Consort Shu did not die from difficult labor. She was murdered by the empress. Sister, do you truly wish to push the fourth prince onto that throne?" The events of recent days had been enough to steel Xiao Ji's resolve. Only when he possessed sufficient ambition himself could I achieve my goal. A person's motivation usually came from two sources, ambition and hatred. I poured my elder brother a cup of Longjing tea harvested before the rain. "Elder brother, if my husband cannot ascend, then I will let you." Before I could finish, my elder brother covered my mouth. "In our past life, father and I remained loyal to the emperor and followed all the rules. What was our ending? We were brutally killed and our bodies dismembered. I do not need a husband. I need a ruler who can protect me completely. If Xiaozhi cannot do it, I will find someone else." A gaze suddenly shot toward us from behind. My elder brother gave me a signal. I immediately grew alert. I wonder how much Xiaoji just overheard. Fortunately, we did not say anything too incriminating. I turned to look at Xiaoji. After several days apart, he looked noticeably thinner, with bloodshot eyes. But unlike before, there was now a trace of determination between his brows. I knew it. He had made up his mind. I called out, "My husband, you have finally returned." Xiaoji strode forward and greeted my elder brother politely, "Eldest brother-in-law." My elder brother scratched his head and smiled foolishly. The three of us had lunch together. Afterward, my elder brother found an excuse to leave. Xiao's emotions were clearly strange. He was neither happy nor sad. His smile looked worse than crying, yet he kept serving me food. I steadied myself and asked, "My husband, are you all right?" Xiaoji stared at me for a long time before setting down his chopsticks. He took my hand and pulled me straight into the room. The moment the door closed, his demeanor changed completely. He pressed me against the door and looked straight into my eyes. "Did you not say you have admired me for a long time? Shall I let you have your way today?" I was stunned. This was completely outside my calculations. Xiaoji's breathing was slightly unsteady, but his gaze remained perfectly clear. "Let me see just how much you truly like me." His breath enveloped me. All my careful schemes had never prepared me for this situation. In my past life, the crown prince had been shameless, and I had been too weak to resist. That memory had always been a shadow in my heart. I pushed against his chest with both hands. "But in my heart you are like a god. How could I dare to profane you?" Our bodies pressed close. I could clearly feel the danger. Xiaoji lowered his head, lifted me onto his shoulder, and carried me toward the bed while saying, "Do not treat me like a god. You may touch me as you please." He tossed me onto the bed. I had barely sat up when he covered me. "My lady Wanzhao, I will belong to you completely." Xiaoji seemed to have unlocked another side of himself. He even knew how to enjoy himself, leaving me somewhat overwhelmed. He refused to let go, burying his face in my neck. His voice was no longer cold but carried a hint of seduction. "We are truly husband and wife now. From this day forward, we share honor and disgrace." He lifted my chin, forcing me to look at him. My wet lashes brushed against his high nose. My voice was slightly hoarse. And then?" Xiaoji spoke as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "Therefore, I must win this game for you." That's right. He and I are now in the same boat. He seemed to see through my thoughts and chuckled softly. "My lady, were you just thinking that we have already shared a bed?" This man usually pretended to be proper, but he is actually very good at teasing. Not only had his tongue grown sharper, but even in the bedroom he had surprised me many times. I had intended to ask whether he had overheard my conversation with my elder brother, but seeing that he showed no suspicion toward me, I decided not to mention it. For the entire month that followed, Xiaoji remained in the prince's residence and did not go out. He deliberately spread rumors that he and I were deeply affectionate, and that he was lost in tender indulgence, unable to extricate himself. I was not a thin-skinned person, but after pretending to be shy for so long, I had learned how to act spoiled. Xiaoji enjoyed it immensely. The empresses and crown prince's spies were thick outside the prince's residence. Every day, peddlers, flower sellers, and fortune-tellers passed by. The quieter Xiaoji remained, the more uneasy the empress and crown prince became. When people were anxious to extremes, they were more likely to lose control. Sure enough, the crown prince secretly sent me a letter. Clearly, there were still traitors inside the prince's residence. The crown prince believed Xiaoji was still having episodes, which was why he dared to invite me so boldly. Xiaoji and I went along with the flow. I went to meet him while Xiaoji hid in the shadows to eavesdrop. The crown prince needed the Chen family's military power. My uncle was useless, so he could only continue currying favor with me. Having learned from the previous incident, he did not dare act recklessly and instead behaved politely. Wang Jiao, have you been well lately? I heard Lao Si had another episode. Did he make things difficult for you? If I had known it would turn out like this, I would have corrected the Bridal Sedan mistake from the very beginning. It was all because of your cousin. She seduced me. On our wedding night, she used aphrodisiac incense to force us to consummate the marriage. I am innocent, you must believe me. Rest assured, I will definitely rescue you from this sea of suffering. I covered my mouth with a handkerchief and barely held back my laughter. The crown prince and Chen Mujiao had been involved since last year. He was truly skilled at defending himself. So, the white moonlight he once cherished has now become leftover rice? I sighed softly, my eyes shifting. Thank you, Your Highness the Crown Prince, for still thinking of me. The Crown Prince rubbed his hands and kept drinking cold tea. It was clear he was struggling to suppress his irritation. The chronic poison in his body had begun to take effect. The Crown Prince was overjoyed. Wang Jiao, you must speak well of me in front of your father. I am the legitimate heir. When the time is right, I will bring you back to the Eastern Palace. You will be my crown princess. I nodded in agreement and pretended to be resentful. If that is the case, Your Highness must not make me wait too long. You know how cruel and heartless the fourth prince is. I live in fear every day. The crown prince immediately reassured me. He left with a delighted expression, completely unaware that the poison had not only made him irritable, but had also stripped him of his clarity. Back at the prince's residence, Xiaoji deliberately picked a fight and pressed me down onto the desk in the study. On the surface, he looked extremely proper. Yet behind closed doors, he grew increasingly unrestrained. Xiaoji nibbled lightly on my earlobe and chuckled hoarsely. My husband is cruel and heartless, leaving you trembling with fear every day? So cruel? I knew he was doing it on purpose. Fine, then I will play along. Not long afterward, war broke out in the northern frontier. Currently, the only capable general left in the capital was Xiaoji. Therefore, he volunteered to lead the expedition. Even though he had previously had episodes, it did not affect his ability to fight. After all, the battlefield was merciless and required exactly this kind of god of slaughter. Before departing, Xiaoji handed over all the more than 1,000 residence troops to me to command. I personally saw him off on horseback. The man wore silver battle armor, a long sword at his waist, his handsome features evoking the image of a civil and martial paragon, elegant as a painting. With so many eyes around, I could not say much. We only exchanged glances. The war in the northern frontier had been within our expectations. To the north, Dayang bordered northern Qi. Several years earlier, a military genius had appeared in northern Qi who claimed to be from another world. Thanks to him, northern Qi's national strength had grown increasingly prosperous. Being a warlike people, they naturally harassed their neighbors repeatedly. But this was also an opportunity for Xiaoji and me. After the army set out, I remained quietly in the inner residence and rarely went out. Yet all news in the capital remained in my hands. My network of spies and informants reported daily. From the palace to the residences of powerful ministers, I kept track of every major and minor matter. Only then could I make the most accurate judgments. The crown prince invited me many times. I declined each time with the excuse of serious illness. After all, I had often feigned illness and stayed in seclusion while still in the Chen manor. In reality, I had long since gone to the southern frontier to fight alongside my father and elder brother. Therefore, everyone knew I was frail and often ill. The crown prince did not suspect anything. The letters Xiaoji and I exchanged used secret codes. Even if the crown prince's people intercepted them, they could not understand. The empress and crown prince sent assassins to the northern frontier, plotting to assassinate Xiaoji. The mother and son even used the traitors they had planted in northern Qi, intending to cause trouble during the battle to eliminate him. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. What I feared most finally happened. Xiaozhu stopped sending letters. Then news came from the northern frontier that he had been ambushed and trapped in a mountain valley. It was the dead of winter. Once troops were surrounded, their chances of survival were extremely low. I was not the type to live and die for him, but Xiaoji was the blade I had painstakingly sharpened. I absolutely could not let it be lost like this. That night, I ordered Fu Liu to continue pretending I was ill in the inner residence. Meanwhile, I took the residence troops and left the city overnight, heading straight for the northern frontier. I had kept my elder brother in the capital precisely because tonight he was on duty with the Imperial Guards. Every 3 days it was his turn to guard the city gate. Mo Xin was the man Xiaoji had left for me. He was also his trusted aide and took meticulous care of me along the way. Princess, the journey is long and arduous. Can you truly endure it? I urged the team forward without rest. At this moment of life and death I did not forget to act. I was truly too deep in character. My husband is still waiting for me. Arriving even 1 moment earlier could change the situation. Even if I die saving him, I will have no regrets. Mo Xin was so moved that tears filled his eyes. Look at that. Men are truly easy to coax, easy to fool. On the road, heavy snow filled the sky. When the team entered a narrow official road, arrows suddenly rained down from both sides. Seeing this, I immediately shouted, "Protect your lives, first attack to defend." The residence troops raised their shields and coordinated with long swords, temporarily blocking the arrows. Before long, the enemy saw that their tactic was ineffective and charged out directly. I stepped out of the carriage and called loudly to the leader, "Brave men, you are surely here to rob wealth. There is no need to fight so desperately. I can give you half of the provisions." The opposing force was not small. If we continued fighting, we would both suffer heavy losses and waste time. I had no right to exhaust resources, so at this moment, compromise was the best strategy. The bandits clearly never expected me to be so generous. I nodded directly to Mo Xin and ordered him to bring forward the 2 carts of provisions at the rear. The bandits looked at one another. Their previously fierce expressions changed. "Big brother this?" The leader lifted the cloth covering the provisions and saw that they were indeed real goods. He clasped his hands toward me. "Young lady, you are truly generous. In that case, I will not block your path. If we truly fought, both sides would likely end up injured. Moreover, these bandits are dressed in rags. Some are so thin their bones show. If not for survival, who would want to be a bandit in such a harsh place?" I believed I could leave smoothly. Before releasing us, the leader asked, "May I know the young lady's name?" I smiled faintly. "A nameless person not worth mentioning. I only hope you all find a way to live soon." The leader froze. As I stepped into the carriage, he bowed to me. If the rivers and mountains were peaceful and the nation prosperous, why would there be so many desperate people? In the end, it is because those in power are incompetent. It is time for a change of emperor. The group continued onward, crossing snow-covered official roads. 3 days later, we arrived at the place where Xiaozhi had been ambushed. But at the scene, only countless large rocks remained. Clearly someone had thrown them down from both sides of the valley. In other words, an ambush had been set here long ago. The enemy also knew Xiaozhi's movements perfectly. The empress's and crown prince's hands had reached into the military camp. Looking at the devastated scene before me, unease rose in my heart. 5 parts of my feelings for Xiaozhi were genuine. The other 5 were still for myself. Therefore, even if something truly happened to him, I would immediately move on to the next plan. My hand rested on my lower abdomen, still flat, never pregnant. But if I wanted a child, it was not impossible. Then I could still support my own child in competing for that position. But before executing the second plan, I would still do everything in my power to save Xiaozhi. "Everyone, search for the prince. Find him for me." The cold wind in the valley stung my eyes. Mo Xin thought I was crying and quickly comforted me. "Princess, the prince is blessed with great fortune. Heaven will surely protect him. You must take care of yourself." I forced a smile. "I hope so." More than 1,000 men searched for an entire day and night but found no bodies beneath the rocks. I was overjoyed. "That's wonderful. The prince is still alive." As I spoke, I wiped away tears that did not exist. The problem was, where was Xiaozhi? He had gone missing from the military camp. There was no news from the enemy either. Just as I was at a loss, a sleek black hunting dog came running from afar. Mos was delighted. "Little Black, it's Little Black, the one the prince raised in the camp." The dog sniffed familiar scents, barked loudly, then turned and ran, leading the way. Mo Xin was overjoyed. "Princess, the prince must be nearby." I immediately led the men in that direction. The cold wind cut like knives. I was prone to tears, so when I saw Xiaoji severely injured, tears streamed down my face. The moment Xiaoji saw me, his Adam's apple bobbed. Leaning on a crutch, he hurried forward. The soldiers behind him could not stop him. "My lady, why have you come here?" 1,000 words and 10,000 emotions condensed into one embrace. He rested his chin on the top of my head, his voice choked. "My lady, I will never forget your devotion in this lifetime." Xiaoji's life was not in danger, but while rescuing a subordinate, a large rock had struck his leg, forcing him to hide here temporarily. The provisions I brought were exactly what was needed. Inside the tent, Xiaoji arranged everything. I lay on a simple wooden plank while the fire gradually warmed my body. Afraid I would feel uncomfortable, he spread his only cloak beneath me. His chin was covered in stubble, he had lost a lot of weight, and his eyes were even deeper. He took my hand, brought it to his lips to warm it with his breath, then removed my thick socks and held my feet against his chest to warm them. "My lady, you have suffered. This time it is all thanks to you. You are truly my lucky star. My lady, I missed you very much." His gaze gradually deepened, his voice carrying a trace of affection. Only after I drifted into a hazy sleep did he lean close to my ear and whisper, "Wanjiao, it is so good to have you. In this lifetime I will never let you down. Rest assured, the throne, I will seize it for you." He believed I loved him deeply. Whether that love was real or fake no longer mattered. What mattered was the final outcome. The next morning, the snow outside was dazzlingly bright, while inside the tent, it was as warm as spring. When I woke, Xiaoji was watching me. I did not know how long he had been staring. The moment he saw my eyes open, he leaned down and smiled. I shrank back slightly into his cloak, my voice trembling. You. My voice had gone hoarse. Xiaoji held me tightly. I did not know where he had learned so many coaxing words. 2 days later, after regrouping, Xiaoji and I returned to the main camp. The deputy generals breathed a collective sigh of relief when their commander returned safely. During his disappearance, Xiaoji had ordered his trusted aides to secretly investigate the traitor in the army. Upon his return, he did not expose the man. Instead, he deliberately leaked false strategies. Sure enough, the traitor immediately passed the information to the enemy. When Dayong and Northern Qi clashed again, Xiaoji used the fewest troops to annihilate nearly 200,000 Northern Qi soldiers in a single battle. It was a resounding victory, the most glorious battle in Dayong's history. Xiaoji rewarded the entire army. That night, after bathing, he approached me. I was studying a map of Northern Qi and pointed to several mineral deposits. "My husband, if we capture this city, it will benefit Dayong greatly." Xiaoji embraced me from behind. Outside he was cold and ruthless in battle, yet in private he was endlessly clingy. I could barely withstand it. He chuckled softly. "My lady, your strategies these past few days remind me of someone." I froze, forcing myself to remain calm. "Who? Scholar Qingshu?" In the past I had used the alias Scholar Qingshu while following my father and elder brother, but I had never directly confronted Xiaoji. How had he recognized me? Xiaoji leaned close to my ear, his voice laced with laughter. "To be honest, I am a man obsessed with military strategy. I was once astonished by your father's and elder brother's tactics, so I investigated in secret. Who would have thought that your father and elder brother were merely the outer shell? The true strategist behind them was Scholar Qingshu. Unfortunately, I could never find that person. I never imagined it was you. My lady, how many more secrets are you hiding from me?" I had thought he would be angry or suspicious. Instead, Xiaoju grew even more excited, as though endlessly fascinated. He even said he greatly enjoyed discussing all kinds of strategies with me. The Northern Qi invasion had already been repelled. According to the Emperor's edict, the army could return to the capital in triumph. But Xiaoji and I decided to press our advantage. Currently, our troops' morale was high and provisions were abundant, the perfect opportunity to suppress Northern Qi. On this earth, all peace is built upon the edge of swords and spears. When the army reached the border, I was stunned. On the trees along the border between the two nations hung countless corpses, frozen like dried meat. Among them were women covered in wounds and children impaled through the body. The sight was too horrific to bear. Xiaoji reached out to cover my eyes, but he forgot. I had followed my father and elder brother in the southern frontier, and had long grown accustomed to life and death. I simply had not known the northern frontier was this cruel. This was no longer merely a struggle for power or ending a war. As a citizen of Dayong, I could not allow this to continue. My voice choked as I issued the order loudly. "All officers and soldiers, listen. For every Northern Qi soldier's head, 1 tael of silver. The more you kill, the greater the reward." To my surprise, the bandits I had encountered earlier also came forward. Upon learning my identity, they volunteered to join the battle. If not for the northern Qi people, we would not have been displaced. If not for the princess saving us, we would have frozen to death in the snow long ago. Please give us the chance to repay you. I nodded in approval. In my heart, I still thought, if the nation were prosperous and the people at peace, who would choose to be a bandit? They stayed behind to clean the battlefield, lowering the bodies and burying them hastily with unmarked graves. For the next half-month, our army's morale grew even stronger. We advanced straight into northern Qi's territory. Battle reports kept arriving in the capital. I deliberately had people spread word that the fourth prince enjoyed the full support of the army and held extremely high prestige within the ranks. This also made Xiaoji deliberately reveal his ambition in front of the traitor. In the capital, the empress and crown prince were surely restless. Xiaoji's and my goal was to force them to make the first move, so that Xiaoji would have sufficient justification to march back to the capital. After capturing Northern Qi's imperial palace, Xiaoji and I temporarily waited for news from the capital. We also enjoyed a few days of leisure. I did not know where he found several erotic storybooks, and even wanted us to act them out. My lady, tonight let us switch identities. You be a weak young lady and I your personal guard. Or you be an arrogant noble daughter and I the male pet you force yourself upon. How about it? He truly knew how to have fun. As expected, the books did not lie. The more proper one appeared on the surface, the more unrestrained one was inside. 1 month later, the empress and crown prince indeed launched a coup. The mother and son wanted to force the emperor to abdicate, so the crown prince could ascend early, then conveniently deal with Xiaoji. Upon receiving the news, I immediately sent the messenger falcon to deliver a letter to the southern frontier, ordering my father to lead his troops back to the capital. Xiaoji's army could not be mobilized, so they remained to garrison northern Qi. Xiaoji and I took only 1,000 residence troops and traveled through the night back to the capital. With the crown prince occupying the palace, my father had sufficient justification to deploy troops. When Xiaoji and I returned to the capital, my father's army had already surrounded the imperial city under the pretext of cleansing the court of corrupt officials. Although the crown prince controlled the palace, his military strength was no match for my father's. The old emperor was on his deathbed. Before dying, he still wished to be buried with his white moonlight, enraging the empress, who stabbed him. When Xiaoji and I charged in, the empress was raving madly. Consort Shu was the one in his majesty's heart. Then what about me? What am I? I am his legitimate wife. I watched the scene coldly. Did the old emperor truly love Consort Shu? He was the emperor. Why could he not uncover the truth of her death? Yet he never punished the empress, simply because her maternal family's power was too great. To preserve the greater situation, he could allow the murderer of Consort Shu to remain securely in the position of empress, enjoying wealth and glory for half a lifetime. In that case, how deep was his love for Consort Shu truly? The so-called white moonlight was merely something already lost. The dead could never be compared to the living. The crown prince was captured. The empress, guilty of regicide, was slain by Xiaoji's sword. He had finally avenged his mother. The old emperor was barely clinging to life but was saved. My elder brother did not understand. Brother-in-law, why did you not ascend the throne directly? Xiaoji smiled bitterly. Eldest brother-in-law, I have had no mother since childhood. Must I lose my father as well? My elder brother's lips twitched. A father like that, whether he exists or not, makes little difference. But Xiaoji was a man who valued emotion, and I did not persuade him otherwise. After all, the throne was already decided. It was only a matter of time. After the deposed crown prince and Chen Mujiao were imprisoned, they insisted on seeing me. I had no desire to go, but the messenger said, "Princess, the deposed crown prince says he already knows everything." I frowned slightly. Knows what? Out of curiosity, I still made the trip to the heavenly prison. Before I even saw anyone, the stench of blood hit me. Chen Mujiao was barely alive, clutching her abdomen as blood flowed continuously. Her hair was disheveled. She reached toward me. Sister, save me." The deposed crown prince rushed forward like a madman and began beating her. Then, like a rabid dog, he charged to the prison door, eyes wide and crazed as he begged, "Chen Wanjiao, in our past life, everything was instigated by that cheap woman. I have already avenged you. Will you return to my side? You are my true crown princess, your father and elder brother, you must help me." As he spoke, he lunged at Mujiao again, tearing at her clothes and attacking her mercilessly. Her screams echoed throughout the prison. So the deposed crown prince had also been reborn. but his willpower and self-control were far inferior to Xiaoji's. In our past life, Xiaoji would rather commit suicide than harm others, while he had become a demon. What surprised me was that on the road to exile, the deposed crown prince had fallen into a ravine. When they found him, only scattered bones remained, likely claimed by wild beasts after the fall. He died without a complete corpse. That was his retribution. The old emperor passed away not long after. Xiaoji ascended the throne smoothly and became emperor. Initially, some ministers opposed it, citing that he had once suffered from madness and might be detrimental to governance, but Xiaoji publicly revealed all the former empress's actions. The so-called madness had been caused by her poison. He had been forced to constantly suppress his rage, which was why he had appeared so erratic before. On the day I was conferred as empress, I asked him, "Why did you not ascend directly before? You even served as crown prince for several days. It was clearly unnecessary." After the palace coup that day, Xiaoji had already seized control of the court. He smiled. "You were originally supposed to be the crown princess. After boarding the wrong bridal sedan, you were mocked by countless people. Therefore, I wanted you to experience being crown princess once." Very well, so it was because of that. Xiaoji had always been obsessed with the bedroom, yet my belly remained slow to show good news. The ministers repeatedly submitted memorials urging the emperor to take more concubines. Only after I had the imperial physicians examine me and confirm there was nothing wrong with my body did I begin paying close attention to Xiaoji in secret. I discovered he was secretly taking contraceptive medicine. I was stunned, my eyes slightly moist. I had thought I had become too immersed in the role and been moved by him. Xiaoji explained, "My mother died in difficult labor. Even though she was murdered by villains, I am still worried. Wait until you are over 20. Then I will let you conceive." I threw myself into his arms like a delicate beauty overwhelmed by her husband's doting love, moved to tears. Xiaoji would never know if he had truly guarded against the Chen family and prevented me from bearing children. I might have killed my husband to prove my loyalty. Even while secretly investigating the infertility issue, I had already drawn up several contingency plans in my mind. 2 years later, I successfully gave birth to our legitimate eldest son. The child was naturally the crown prince. Xiaoji personally educated him. At the same time, he suppressed all officials who submitted memorials suggesting he take concubines. Xiaoji had once said that the tragedy of the first half of his life stemmed from the struggles within the imperial family. He absolutely would not let his children fall into that vortex. Xiaoji and I had 2 sons and 1 daughter. The second half of our lives could be considered peaceful and joyful. I always knew when to be gentle and never revealed my sharpness. When there was no danger, I hid my talents. A person did not always have to stand at the forefront of the storm. Of course, I also occasionally had my father and elder brother demonstrate their loyalty to dispel any suspicions the emperor might have. Many years later, beneath a sky filled with crimson sunset, Xiaoji held my hand as we strolled through the imperial garden. He had always been steady and reserved, cold by nature, rarely confiding in others. I seemed to be his only confidant. He asked, "Empress, do you still love me?" I smiled and leaned against him. "His Majesty is the person I love most in this world." Love? Of course I love. But it was loving myself to the extreme, without holding anything back. In this life, I had played the game correctly, but that did not mean I would believe in romantic love between men and women in this world.